sir. I'd like to welcome Tansri Professor T. Marimuthu for for this discussion. I'd like to know the views on my global migration in general and Malaysian Indian diaspora in particular. Sir, good afternoon. Yeah. The Tamil school education system of Malaysia has commemorated its 200 years of existence recently. What are the main contributions and contemporary challenges of Tamil school system in multi-ethnic Malaysia?
Tamil schools have been there for the last 200 years, and it is, as far as the Tamil schools are concerned, it is a symbolic institution for the Tamils. It has been there for 200 years. It also traces the history of Indians in the last 200 years. Therefore, the Tamil school has an emotional relationship with the community. So, although the contribution, you're talking about the contribution, before the attainment of independence, the Tamil schools were performing a custodial function, meaning that it just provided 3-4 years of education so that it was actually preparing the children for the laboring work in the plantations. And there was no avenue of social mobility in terms of educational mobility. Therefore, but after independence, the Tamil school played the role of social mobility in terms of their students completing the 6 years Tamil school education and going on to secondary education. And that is the contribution. The single contribution that has been made for the Indians would be that it provided an avenue from the plantation background for them to get into the education, the next level of education, and then they can theoretically go up to the higher education, university education, and so on. And but for some time, there has been the attainment of these schools have not been able to provide that educational mobility because the problems have been in terms of the infrastructural facilities, quality of teachers, and quality of students, and so on. All these have provided that for the first maybe 10-20 years, that problem has been there. Higher dropout rates, lowest academic achievement rates, and poor schools, poor facilities, and so on. They have been. This is actually they have been provided these from the colonial days, and it has taken some time before the schools can compare with the schools in urban areas. But now I am very happy to say the achievement rates of the Tamil school students in terms of the recent UPSR achievement, they have achieved as equal to the other media schools like Chinese as well as national schools. In fact, I saw statistics that the average achievement of the Tamil school students in UPSR achievement was higher among, even compared to Chinese and national school. Therefore, the Tamil schools are here to stay. Although the enrollment is coming down, not because the parents are not sending them to the Tamil school, but because the birth rate has been going down. The fertility rate, not only for the Indians, but across the ethnic groups, except for the Malays. That I think has maintained. For the Chinese and the Indians, the rate has come down. Therefore, generally speaking, the enrollments in all schools is coming down.
Next question. The 14th general election of Malaysia is due in 2018. There is a rise of discontent against the BN for various reasons. Do you think that the ruling BN coalition can retain its power or not? Could you share with us the current political dynamics in Malaysia?
No, there are problems. I mean, I'm not saying there are not problems. There are problems against the BN, there are also problems within the opposition parties. So I can only remember, I mean, it's a continuing problem. All political parties will have problems. There, there was, in fact, in 1990, when I was contesting for a seat in Parliament, for Parliament, uh, the, the coalition Barisan National was expected to lose because there were internal problems. There was one of the vice presidents or the deputy president started another party, and therefore Barisan was expected to lose. But somehow they they won the election with two-thirds majority. What is important here is the two-thirds majority. Two-thirds majority in parliament provides the ruling party to change the constitution. So only in the last general election they did not get the two-thirds. Therefore, there are problems. I won't say the problems, but whether the ruling party will again come to power is a question. But looking at the opposition, they are in a disarray. They are they are strange bedfellows. You know, like for example, now the Dr. Mahathir, who was in fact the ruling, he was there for 21 years, and he has now joined the opposition because his main uh, concern is to get remove Najib from his position of prime ministership. There is people say that he has got his own because he wants his own children. Not necessarily ego clash because he has done. I mean, Mahathir, all said and done, he has put Malaysia on the map. He was an innovative person. He made decisions. He was very strong. He was able to do things without any problem. That I mean, any person come in there because when you have when you have racial parties, I mean, the parties, political parties, are all divided according to race, except for the opposition. Even the opposition, like DAP, is considered to be a racial party. So racist is it's not a it's not a it's not a negative term as far as I'm concerned because everybody is fighting for his race. Therefore, he is actually he must be seen to be supporting the Malays so that he will be in power. Uh, I cannot say that he's a racist as such, but he has done a lot for the country as a whole. Um, so I think yes, definitely. I think he's 21 years. He has, look at the projects that he has done. It's the, 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 the highways connecting infrastructure facilities during his time was excellent. And of course, I must pay tribute to my mentor, political mentor, Dato Sri Sami Velu. I mean, he was there as a PWD minister for such a long time, and he was able to get the roads going. I mean, the Penang Bridge and the federal roads and so on. I mean, infrastructural facilities was one thing. And then Putrajaya, the capital, the KLIA, the, 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 the airport, and so on. I mean, all these, they say mega projects, but mega projects needed what you call workers. And this is how where we are coming from. We needed workers, and workers have the immigrant workers. We had to get immigrant workers from Indonesia and Vietnam and Cambodia and Bangladesh and Pakistan and so on. So he's father of modern Malaysia, definitely.
So I'd like to know the present or the contemporary scenario of Indian migration to Malaysia. Actually, in colonial period, most of them came from southern states, particularly Tamil Nadu and other states like Kerala. But what is the present scenario? Is it the same, or they're coming to Malaysia from different parts of India. So can you just tell us the current scenario of Indian migration to Malaysia?
Uh, Current scenario of Indian migrants. Indian migrants, as far as I'm concerned, they are largely from the south. I don't see much from the north. They are coming for the south mainly because of the service sector. We need cooks. We need for the restaurants. And when I mean, they have got skills. I mean, a cook. I mean, is a skilled person. That doesn't matter because as long as he's a cook, he commands a very high salary in the in Malaysia, and the restaurants. In fact, when there was some restriction in terms of immigration, many of the restaurants closed. So I think it is largely from the southern part of India, and then some of them will work in the plantation sector, but largely in the service sector. I don't see them in the manufacturing or the construction sector.
So Malaysian Indian Congress has turned 70 years recently. Could you tell us about the relevance and role under the ethnicity-based political system of Malaysia? Is it still a popular political party among the Malaysian Indians?
Well, it is still the largest party representing the Indians. We've got 2.2 million Indians, and I think out of that we have at least 500,000 members. Uh, and Of course, there's some party problems within the party, and it is fractured a bit, fractured. And but the majority of them are with the under the leadership of Dr. Sri S. Subramaniam, and the the support for Barisan has come down in the after Hindraf in 2008. Is it 8 or 8 9? No, Indra was 2007, but the election was in 2008. That's the time that the Indian the Indian support to Barisan has always been 80 to 90%, and they were considered by the Barisan that the Indian vote is a fixed deficit. So therefore, they really don't bother about the Indians. They will vote for Barisan. So, but in the 2008 election, they turned after Hindraf, effect of Hindraf, they turned and then they lost the two-third majority. They still haven't got the two-third majority. Therefore, the Indian vote in the last election, 2013, improved a bit, came up to 50% or 60%. So I think now the Prime Minister Najib is very aware of the Indian vote because we make the difference. In about 30 to 35 constituencies, we will make the difference. We got 10 to 20% of the votes. Therefore, I think they understand. And I know the Prime Minister since my parliamentary days. He is a very, very nice person. And I think he understands the position of the Indians, not for political reasons alone, but he understands that the Indians need some help, particularly in education, business opportunities, and many other employment opportunities, and so on. That is why he has set up several committees. As soon as he came into power, he set up certain committees like he has a cabinet committee chaired by him, chaired by the Prime Minister to address the problems of the Indians. And then he has set up an education uh, committee on Tamil schools to review and come out with a report. And he has set up another committee for small businesses and to upgrade them from give them small training in terms of training, business training, and any sort of training that finance is being given, and also for big businesses, business loans. He has set up another, and he has given millions of dollars. Total, I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least half a billion he has given, particularly for Tamil schools and business loans and so on. So insofar as Najib is concerned, he is doing for the Indians. It's political, but at the same time, he understands the socio welfare problems of Indians.
Rajinikanth starring multilingual movie Cavalli brought the issues of Malaysian Indians into limelight, and also the movie triggered debate in India and Malaysia. What's your point of view about the movie?
Well, I only saw the movie once, so I didn't think that I wanted to see it again because it is just an entertainment movie. I mean, they talk about gangsterism, and this guy goes into prison and comes back and then fights for the Indians and so on. But essentially, it is a gangster movie, and it sanitizes the the issue of gangsterism. And I do not think that it is really uh, showing the real problems of the Indians in the country. So they could have done better. They could have definitely done better to have put in such a famous actor. And all that they should have done is to have interviewed people like, in different sectors, professionals, academics, and at the lower level and so on. Then they could have understood the problem of the Indians as a whole, rather than just focusing on one part of this thing. And that has given I think it has given us Malaysian Indians a negative image. Everybody thinks that we are all gangsters and doing all sorts of nonsense.
How was the response for the movie within the community in Malaysia?
Yeah, movie, of course, both in India and it's because of Rajinikanth, not because the movie was great. It's Rajinikanth, I mean, they go and see. It's also filmed in Malaysia, and Rajinikanth coming and doing. There were already a lot of hype about the film. Uh,
But there is a narrative within Malaysia. They say that the movie has really brought our issues into limelight. Do you agree to this point?
Perhaps yes. I mean, what issue? What issue are they talking about?
The, the crimes and gangsterism within the community.
Don't people know that the highest rates of crimes are committed by Indians? The highest rates of those who are in prisons are Indians. They're all the social ills are amongst the Indians. It's a well-known fact. I mean, this is not. We are not proud that it is being shown elsewhere to show that the Indians are like this. Why? There are many millionaires. One of the top millionaires is an Indian. The business committee has moved on, and you see the Indians. I mean, they all have the number of graduates and so on. I mean, so it is one-sided. It is, yeah, it is. It's focused on a negative image for the Indians.
So the present Prime Minister Najib promised various socio-economic measures for the empowerment of the Indian poor at the time of lost general elections. Could you explain in detail about his initiatives?
No, as I earlier said, I think the initiatives. What do we need? The Indians need education, education, education. We need places, institutions of higher learning. We need opportunities, employment opportunities. We need training. We need business opportunities. So these, and of course, there are other cultural and social issues. So, like for example, gangsterism. How do you arrest? It is not an Indian problem, it is a national problem. You have to find these kids. They don't want to go and do whatever negative things and get caught and sometimes they will be hanged. So I think you have to arrest the problem at the source. And why are they? This is a hangover from the time of the fragmentation of estates. I don't know whether you know this. The estate, most of us lived in the estates. 60 to 70% of the Indians in Malaysia were in the plantation. They were brought as indentured laborers into plantations. In the 1950s and 60s, when we got independence, all the plantation owners were afraid that the plantations will be nationalized, just like Burma or Indonesia. So they all sold the plantations, and fragmentation took place. When fragmentation took place, there was excess of labor, and these laborers were thrown out, and they all drifted into the fringes of urban centers. And they had no saleable skills. They did not possess skills for them to get on in life. So they fell into the uh, the drug pins and gangsters and so on. Easily they were recruits. They were good recruits for these kingpins, and unfortunately they were you know got into this negative activities, and therefore that is one problem. And the other problems are, as I said, education. He has already set up a committee because 50% of the Indian kids are attending Tamil schools, the quality of which, as I said earlier, was questionable. So now I think in the last 10 years at least, the improvements in the academic achievement is good. And many of these kids are getting into the universities and completing it and doing good jobs. And the other one is business opportunities. The Malay Bhumiputra are helped, they are given money, opportunities, everything. And that's what they're asking, business opportunities, training for business. And I think he is doing that. So business or employment opportunities, of course, employment, we have been asking for until the cows come home, that we should get places in the civil service. And some places are being given. I think it's only about 2 to 3% now, although we are about 7.6% in the population. So he is doing. Of course, if in the process of doing it, he will have some opposition from somewhere else. So that he has to do the balance. But I think he is doing his best.
What kind of expectations and aspirations do Malaysian Indians have from India? Because Malaysia is very closer to India, so I think they are very attached to India. I mean, that's what I make out when I was there as a field woman, as a researcher. They always talk about Ur, home. I mean, Ur, yeah. So they're very fond of their old memories, and I think they have a strong attachment towards India. So I like to know what expectation do they have from India?
I think they had a lot of expectations before. I don't think they want anything from India. It's, I'm really saying this because I've attended the 10 Pravasi conferences, and nothing, PIOs were not, the problems of PIOs were not addressed. They only talked about NRI and their capital into India. I mean, we went there as indentured laborers. Therefore, we needed, at that point of time, we needed places for education, particularly for medicine and other professional areas. I think there was one cultural scholarship. I mean, to be fair to India, there's cultural scholarship where they gave a few places. I think what the Malaysian Indians expected were uh, educational opportunities, and then perhaps business opportunities. You know, otherwise, culturally and socially, we are very close. And I think it may be the largest number of people who are coming to India because they go to the temples. They go and see, culturally we are very near. And I personally, every year we try to make it for uh, the music festival in Chennai. So the same sort of things happening, for in other parts of India. The Telugu community, for example, they have, and also the other. I think in terms of the Indian population, 85% are Tamils, and they have a very close relationship with Tamil Nadu. And so that cultural and social relationship will be there. What we need is facilitate economic relationship, give us some business opportunities, have many more interactive visits, commercial business visits, and so on. Really open up opportunities, both here and there too. I mean, it should be mutual. We don't want to be, at this point of time, we don't want to be a dependent community. We are okay now. We can move forward on our own. But give us opportunities in education, business, and maybe even cultural opportunities and so on.
Sir, you have been the former agriculture minister in Malaysia, and also you have been a well-known professor in the University of Malaya. I'd like to know what is your vision for the community? What do you think the community? What do you think that the community should go? I mean, what are your strategies for the Indian community? What you have been thinking in your mind? What should be done?
We have been thinking about the only way is through education. There's no other, the Chinese community were not bothered about education. They were bothered about business. They, everybody, they went into business and they'll fail and they'll come back again. And so they had business. And the Malay community has got the government to support them. So for us, we have to be on our own. And one study by Gazana has shown that in terms of social ladder, they use the ladder concept, and then they said we are the last. Definitely we'll be the last because we have to do it on our own, and we have got accumulated deficits, we are bringing with the baggage. The baggage is all the deficits. Therefore, the fact that we are already third is itself is admirable. So my aspiration for the community or my vision for the community is doing well. All right, the community is moving forward, but there is maybe 1/3, maybe 20% of these people is dropouts. They get into gangsterism and so on. And what we need is, as a community, we must address this problem. Address them, save them from getting into the nefarious, negative activities. That is our challenge. If we do this, I think the 70 to 80% of the community is fine. It is the 20% that, like cavalli express, that is the one that gives us the bad image of Indians. If it's still toiling and so on, no, everybody is out. No more in only the Bangladeshis, poor Bangladeshis are working in the plantations. So my vision for the community in this 21st century, by the end of this century, it'll be our century for this, for the Indians. I mean, globalized Indians are doing well, and I don't see any reason why the Malaysians cannot do it.
So the final question to you, sir, what is the immigration policy in Malaysia? I mean, are they going to be very strict in terms of getting the foreign workers, or how? I mean, what is their? I would like to know the current scenario in terms of the immigration policies for foreign workers.
I will be speaking this evening on the policies and so on. However, the policies are dictated by the shortage of manpower. If you reduce the immigration, certain factories are shut down, certain business units will have to be closed, and so on. Therefore, it affects national income, GDP. So it is going to be a continuous process. We are going to have, it is already stated, we have got 2.1 million legal workers and another 2 or 3 million illegal workers. So they all performing a job. So in terms of policy, they don't want, they are given a certain number of years, 3 years. After that, they will have to go back. And so, it is, the policy will continue. This is the dilemma that we have. We need the workers. At the same time, there are some negative effects on the population. So the local population look at the immigrants in a negative way. So it is love and hate relationship.
So there was a international pressure on Malaysia to allow the Rohingya Muslims because Malaysia rejected them and they were trying to enter. Finally, Malaysia was pressurized to accept them, but on certain conditions. So that's what I like to know. What is the present scenario of the immigration policy?
The first thing would be they say they will not accept anybody, all right, because there are too many people, too many. But asylum seekers and on compassionate grounds, they will take. For example, Syrians. I think if I'm not mistaken, we 3,000, 3,000, about 3,000 Syrians to be taken in. I think the being Muslim would be one plus factor for them, so that they can, the culturally and religiously would be the same. And so I think we have we have actually, if you ask me, we have too many immigrants, and the negative effects are felt uh, largely in the state of Sabah and Sarawak, because there was even at one point of time armed incursion into the state. So there's a lot of negative activities. So, but the positive thing is their contribution to the economic growth, GDP. And so the government itself is in a bit of a dilemma to take them. And that a case in point is that the Minister of Human Resource have already signed with the Bangladeshi government to bring in 1.4 Bangladeshis over a period of 3 years. And there was some when the news came out, the employers associations had made a lot of noise. So the Deputy Prime Minister just stopped the recruitment of workers, immigrants, and that affected the businesses. And so he had to again release and bring in more for the plantation sector, for the manufacturing sector, and the construction sector. So that is the dilemma that we have.
Thank you, sir.